everyone, welcome back to Utility Sports. We have massive news in the NBA, a huge trade which we are going to dive into. Welcome everyone to the show. Really glad to have you guys all here now joining us live. This is the first live for a little while, and I'm extremely excited for it. There's so many things to talk about, a lot of different things changing as we go here. So I am extremely excited for it, trying to figure out all my new settings here for my stream as well. Welcome everyone to the stream. A little bit of a precursor maybe to the trade deadline live streams. And Rams fan here says Jimmy to Phoenix is happening. We're going to talk about that in today's live stream, as well as covering what just happened between the Phoenix Suns and Utah Jazz. Brendan, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. DJ says the Suns going all in on one now. That does seem like it is the outcome. Alfred says, hope this doesn't end up screwing the Rockets. Don't worry, Alfred. I actually don't think it will. We're going to talk about all of that and more. I do need to send out a quick tweet right now, though, saying that I am live on the channel. Come join us talking Suns, Jazz trade, and Jimmy to Phoenix? Question marks. Let's send that in there. Everyone, welcome to the stream. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you are new. And here is something we have to talk about. Here's the news from Shams Charania. Let me make sure you guys can see this on the screen. You can. Very good. The news from Shams Charania here. The Phoenix Suns are trading their 2031 unprotected. That's the key word here. Unprotected first to the Utah Jazz for 3 first-round picks. Sources tell ESPN the Suns are acquiring the least favorable. Another key set of words here. Least favorable first in 2025 between Cleveland and Minnesota. And with how things are going, that will be probably pick 30 or 29, depending on the Thunder and Cavaliers record. A 2027 first-round pick, which would be the least favorable of Cleveland, Minnesota, or Utah. And a 2029 first, which is, again, the least favorable of Cleveland, Minnesota, and Utah. This is one of the few times in NBA history we've ever seen 3 draft picks traded for 1 draft pick, not on NBA draft night. And you might be wondering, why is this going to happen? What's going on? Why are they trading 3 first-round picks for 1 first-round pick? And the thing I always say on the channel, quality over quantity. You can have all of the first-round picks in the world, but if they're not in the top 10, top 14, if they're not in the top 20, they become significantly less valuable. For example, if you had picks 20, 21, 22, and 23 in this draft, that's 4 first-round picks. You wouldn't trade those 4 first-round picks for number 1 if you were the team with number 1, right? You wouldn't trade down from Cooper Flagg to get 4 picks in the 20s, and that's essentially what we're seeing here. The Jazz, are trading 3 first-round picks with significantly hampered value compared to that far-out 2031 first, which could be a real golden cash cow for the Jazz down the road, depending on what happens to the Phoenix Suns post Kevin Durant, post Devin Booker. 2031 is a long time from now. The Jazz will be sitting and waiting on that pick for some time, but this is extremely valuable. So yes, this is the big thing here. The Suns get the worst pick of those 3 all in every year. So this year, it will probably be pick 30 or pick 29 from the Cleveland Cavaliers. In 2027, it will be the worst of the 3 between the Cavs, Wolves, and Jazz. In 2029, again, it will be the worst between the Cavs, Wolves, and Jazz. And the reason that the Utah Jazz specifically are doing this, one, they already have a huge influx of draft picks to begin with. They have a vast collection of picks, so they don't really need their own flexibility as much. And trading out these least favorable picks, there's no real harm done here. The likelihood that all of Cleveland, Utah, and Minnesota are all bad simultaneously moving forward is not very high. So ultimately, these picks are going to probably be in the 20s and maybe even very late 20s most of these years. And for that trade, Utah specifically gets the 2031 first. And you might be saying, well, wait a minute. If that's the case, why would Phoenix do that? We're going to talk about that in this video as well. Let me go and switch my share screen over to the trade machine. And this is exactly where things are going to get really fun in this video. Here is a look at another trade I was trying to figure out earlier. Don't pay too much attention to that. I spend a lot of time looking at trade machine stuff to try and figure out what's going to happen. We're going to ultimately try and make a 4-team or 5-team construction here because that's something I have talked about at length. And this is going to center around Jimmy Butler. So let me put the Jazz in here. Ultimately, what we're seeing right now, what we're going to say is it's just the Cavs first to the Suns. We're just going to use Cleveland's first for all of these because Cleveland is presently the best team right now. It will be the easiest way to showcase exactly what's going on. This is ultimately the trade right now that we have seen, right? If this would click and do what I want it to do. There we go. So this is the trade that just happened, right? These first-round picks for one first-round pick. And remember, it's the least favorable. So it could be Minnesota or Utah in 2027 or 2029. In 2025, it will be Cleveland's pick. I can guarantee that. So with that in mind, what is Phoenix trying to do? And this is where we add in a third team. But the issue is here when it comes to salaries, well, look at that. Bradley Beal, Jimmy Butler, those salaries work pretty well together. The only issue, though, is Miami wants to be good, and they really don't want Bradley Beal. They already have Tyler Hero who's having a breakout season. So if Jimmy Butler's going to find his way to Phoenix, we have to find some situation for Bradley Beal to land in. And for months, I have been saying that that team would very, very likely end up being the Chicago Bulls. But again, the issue here is the Bulls might not want Bradley Beal, but there's incentives out of this now with those 3 first-round picks that maybe something could come to fruition, right? This is where things can get really creative. This is where things can get really fun. Another destination to talk about, if it's not the Chicago Bulls, could be the New Orleans Pelicans, something centered around this Brandon Ingram contract, which is crazy. Alfred saying, everyone hit the thumbs up button. Yes, please. Trevor Newman says, Ishbia is Ishbiaing. The Utility Sports Victory Lap is going to be insane. I've been taking the Victory Lap the last year and a half. No, this is not clickbait. This is an actual trade, Carter. This is an actual trade. Texas Sports says, I'm happy crazy stuff is happening around Phoenix right now. Rockets own the bulk of the Suns' future. That is something that we've talked about a lot in the past. Welcome, everyone, to the stream. Glad to have you guys in here. Really appreciate you guys. 150 people watching live right now. I'm bummed I could not go live immediately, but I had to set some things up for this. But I am very much excited. And what we're talking about now, as you can see the actual trade on the bottom, I have that on the ticker for you guys if you haven't noticed quite yet. The reason that we're doing this is we're talking through what Phoenix's actual plan is here now. So Phoenix gets 3 first-round picks for 1 first-round pick. They traded a high-quality pick far out into the future for a real quantity of first-round picks, 3 of them to be exact. Now, they're not very valuable picks, and I'm not exactly sure what they're going to get done with them. But what I want to show quick is something I've been talking about for a little bit of time. So again, really hope you guys are enjoying the stream. This is the actual trade here reported by Shams Charania, like I said. Not really surprising. Here's the Jazz's collection of picks by Bobby Marks. Definitely something worth looking at. What I'm going to do here is show a couple of my old tweets. 8 hours ago, I said if Heat trade Butler, it will be in a 3-team or 4-team deal. Third team would be Chicago or New Orleans more than likely. And look at what I said. Let me go back to it. I somehow screwed this up. I said maybe the Jazz will get involved. If I could type, that would be great. And this is what I've been talking about for months. Again, this goes back to last month, a trade that I've talked about multiple times on the channel in the past. I continue to think this is the only feasible way to get Jimmy Butler to the Phoenix Suns. Bradley Beal would waive his no trade clause in order to be reunited with former college coach Billy Donovan. Bulls gain a first-round pick. Now, this could be a little bit different given the possible speculation now with the 3 first-round picks. Maybe this deal looks a little bit different. But ultimately, the idea here is Bulls get Bradley Beal, Suns get Jimmy Butler, Heat get draft compensation, and Zach LaVine. But there's also rumors and speculation right now that the Heat don't want a longer contract. So with everything going on here, the Suns have essentially turned 1 first-round pick into 3 to make another trade. One like this one, which is exactly what we're trying to figure out here now. What is the exact trade? What will it actually look like? And that's what we're going to talk about right here now. The Suns and Jazz, they've made their trade. Okay, we're going to factor this in. The Suns are very clearly going after Jimmy Butler. The Suns will try to get Jimmy Butler. They will be very aggressive in this pursuit and will ultimately get a deal done for him. Now, it does hinge on Bradley Beal's no trade clause. It hinges on a bunch of other stuff. Remember, they're a second apron team, so they can't aggregate players together. You can't combine Nurkic and Grayson Allen's salaries, for example. So if something is going to happen for Jimmy Butler, Bradley Beal has to be on the move, and he will be on the move. So keep that in mind. Welcome, everyone, to the stream. Glad to have you guys all in here. I'm seeing your comments flying in. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure, if you are new, leave a like and subscribe. So Many Moon says Beal rejects a trade to the Bulls every time, right? This is where that personal relationship with Billy Donovan that I continue to talk about. I've talked about it for months now on the channel, and people who've been watching know that I've been very, very vocal about that. And the reason why Bradley Beal has as much say in a trade as any other GM around the league does. Bradley Beal essentially gets to play general manager with his contract. If the Suns want to trade him, Bradley Beal gets to sign off on any kind of trade, and not just which team would he be okay with getting traded to, the actual package as well. He could play hardball and say, I'm not getting traded unless this, and this happens. Now, we haven't really seen that in NBA history. It'd be very unprecedented for that kind of exact thing to play out, especially for a player like Bradley Beal, who's not a 1A superstar, right? But Beal, I think, is going to be open to getting moved, given the fact that he's now coming off the bench for Phoenix. His role has drastically changed. His production has changed. His statistics are all down. If he found himself reuniting with his college coach in, say, Chicago, that could be something that makes sense. The Pelicans, though, are a team that theoretically could make sense for Miami to work with. And the reason why, first of all, the Pelicans are not apron restricted. They're not in the second apron. They can aggregate salaries, which means Brandon Ingram to the Heat does make some sense here. Now, you're looking for $12 million to fill in. I don't think the Pelicans are going to want to trade Herb Jones, okay? I think that's a non-starter for them. This is where, and this is why I've been kind of skeptical on the Pelicans actually being the team to get involved here. It's just very difficult for me to see where the other salary goes and what specifically comes to fruition here, right? Because this is where difficulty happens. This is where we still need a Bradley Beal landing spot. And to get to this $50 million mark, the Pelicans have to throw in other salaries. I just don't see a way that they can realistically do that. This is what I've been pointing to, and the reason why I just don't think the Pelicans are as likely as a team like Chicago, because they have this Levine contract and this Javon Carter contract. And if you do the math on that, $6.5 million plus $43 million puts you right at that $49.5 million mark, which is very, very close to this Bradley Beal number, which opens up a lot of different possibilities. The Bulls, I could see being a team to get involved. The issue here, though, does Zach LaVine want to go to Miami? Probably not, which means maybe we have to get a fifth team involved. And now you're looking for a Zach LaVine team. And it's not just a team that's going to want to give up any assets. It's a team that's just flat out willing to take in a contract. Georgia Dog, no trade guide today. Guess I was anticipating this trade instead. Trade guide will be coming out tomorrow, though, hopefully, if I'm able to get to it and record it tonight. This obviously is throwing a little bit of a wrench into my plans a bit, but I'm still extremely, extremely excited with everything going on. Remember, the actual trade that we saw is down on the ticker below. Don't forget as well, guys, I will be live on the channel the entire week of the NBA trade deadline from Monday through Thursday. You're going to want to be there. Do not miss it. But what we're really talking about right now is the Phoenix Suns, Utah Jazz trade. And then there's also questions here about what about Suns, Heat, Bucks, and a fourth team. So this is where Milwaukee, again, this is where restrictions make it very difficult. The Bucks don't have a salary that really makes a lot of sense here because the Bucks are a second apron team. They cannot aggregate salary, so they could not be a Brandon Ingram landing spot unless you're giving up one of Damian Lillard or Giannis Antetokounmpo, which we just know is not going to happen. Chris Middleton, $32 million, not big enough to take in Brandon Ingram, given the fact that this team is a second apron team before any trade. And because of that, again, they cannot aggregate salaries. They cannot take in more salary than they're sending out. That's a key thing here for Phoenix. The reason that this will work, Bradley Beal makes $50 million. Jimmy Butler makes a little bit under $49 million. By rule, they can make this trade. Now, there's going to have to be a lot of moving parts here, which is why there's a lot of complications. I don't really understand a way that Milwaukee will easily be able to get involved into a deal unless Miami's really going seller mode and maybe sending Tyler Hero out in some type of trade. But again, that's where things get really weird, and I'm not going to go down that route because I don't think that's what's going to happen. Milwaukee is just a very tricky landing spot to see any functional, feasible trade come to fruition between these teams because they cannot, by rule, harbor Bradley Beal. They don't have any $50 million contracts to take him in as a second apron team. So Bradley Beal cannot go to Milwaukee. This is where, though, if we go back and we look at a variety of different options, like Zach LaVine cannot go to Milwaukee, again, for the same rules. So there has to be some moving parts here, some moving pieces, and there has to be a few things that happen to open up pathways or flexibility to get under the second apron. And that's exactly what Conqueror is talking about here. If the Bucks find a way to salary dump Pat Connaughton, this is where something like this could make some sense. And this is where we need to get the Chicago Bulls involved once again. Bradley Beal goes to the Bulls. Okay, this is where things are starting to get very messy, as you can see, because we have 5 teams that were trying to get a trade done. The screen doesn't even fit them all, really. Zach LaVine would go to Milwaukee. But what has to happen first here is essentially Pat Connaughton is getting salary dumped to another team. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start another screen share because this is exactly what's going to happen first. Let me end this one and let me start up a new one because, again, there is a lot of things that have to happen here. And like Conqueror is saying, if the Bucks can get below the second apron, that is their best way to get something done. And just like Brady Thompson's about to say, this is what I was just about to do. We go to Milwaukee and we go to a team like Detroit who has cap space. And this is where Detroit is a unique player this offseason. They actually have the ability to take in salary. Pat Connaughton comes in. This opens up the avenue for Milwaukee to be able to cobble together salaries. What they're going to do in this as well is give the Pistons some draft capital, right? I'm going to do a second round pick in this. It's essentially this deal, okay? And you might be looking at this and say, what the heck? The Milwaukee Bucks trade a player and a pick for nothing? Yes, that's exactly what happens here. Maybe the Pistons send a little bit of cash or something, whatever the owners agree to, right? But this is the precursor to the deal that you guys are about to see me finalize on the other side, okay? So this is why all the new trade salary stuff is crazy. Yes, it's essentially going to be a 5 or 6 team trade if something like this comes to fruition. Because Zach LaVine to Milwaukee, I actually do think makes quite a bit of sense as an upgrade over Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton's expiring salary would go to Miami here. And now the fact that Milwaukee has the ability to aggregate salaries, this is where someone like Bobby Portis could make some sense to include in a trade as well. In this one, he would not go to the Bulls, He would go to Miami more than likely. And in this deal, essentially now that we have these 3 first-round picks, right, these picks have gone to Phoenix now, we are going to reroute them. This goes to Miami in 2025. This goes to Miami in 2027. And then what we also see here now is this 2029 first goes to Chicago. Ultimately, the Suns are completely assetless. If they make a trade like this, they will be completely without asset. They will have no draft picks. They will be as bare as you could imagine a cupboard being in terms of draft picks. You open the cupboard, there's nothing there. It's a desolate house. Nothing's left, okay? But what you get is Jimmy Butler, who is a tremendous fit on paper and in theory with this roster. He brings a kind of toughness and a mentality that I think is lacking from this Phoenix Suns team. And from an actual X's and O's perspective, gives them a little bit more playmaking, more natural size into their lineup, a little bit more two-way versatility, better lineup flexibility. Ultimately, yes, the Suns could be screwed. And Alfred, this is why I think if you're a Rockets fan, you should be pretty excited about all this coming to fruition, because the player that they're giving up everything that they have left for is in his mid-30s in Jimmy Butler, and he continues to burn bridges with every organization he's ever been with. Things did not end well in Chicago. Things did not end well in Minnesota. He barely was in Philadelphia, and things still didn't end very pretty there. And now in Miami, things are ending horribly. Okay, but you look at this overall trade. The Bucks, and we've got some rules here because this isn't going to say that it works because of some of the situations, right? So don't. And for some reason, it says that Bobby Portis was going to the Bulls. Okay, I need to fix this because Bobby Portis should not have been going to the Bulls. Where is the money? Oh no, this is right. Wait, no. Why does it say Bobby Portis is going to I'm just going to undo that trade and send him to the Heat because that's where he's supposed to be. So let's take a look at this now. Yeah, so it's going to say that Milwaukee can't do this because of the aprons. Remember, we cleared that up with the Pat Connaughton situation. So it's going to say failed, but trust me, again, if they dump Pat Connaughton to Detroit, they can open this up as a possibility. And this is a deal that I think does make a lot of sense for everyone involved. Chicago, actually, one thing that we're going to want to do here with the Bulls as well, if we look at the salaries around the table here, Miami could take in a little bit more salary. So that's a possibility to talk about. We're going to have to essentially find a sixth team for this contract right here of Javon Carter is essentially what's going to happen. I'm just going to send him to the Heat for now. You guys get the picture. This could be another team that Detroit could get involved. Detroit, honestly, looking at the pieces, this is ultimately going to be the trade. I'm going to go over to Twitter so I can tweet this, and we can talk through the possibilities of it over there. Remember, this is something I've been talking about. I've been talking about the Bulls at length a bunch. Welcome everyone to the channel. Links in the description, by the way, if you guys want to go follow me over on Twitter. I'm also going to send the link in the chat right now so you guys can go follow me if you're new. Welcome everyone to the tweet, or to the stream, excuse me. Make sure you guys go give that a check as well. And welcome to Utility Sports if it's your first time watching. And I know a lot of you have been long supporters of the channel. So let's talk about this. Theoretical trade outcomes, okay? This is where things get very, very crazy. We're going to talk 3-team trade. Pistons use cap space. Let me get this in here. 3-team trade. Okay, I want everyone following me. Pistons receive Javon Carter. And also Pat Connaughton. And 2 second-round picks. I'm going to put a note here. Carter could be traded to another team with room exception left. Okay, so there's the 3-team trade that starts all of this. Pistons use cap space to pick up extra draft capital. Bucks dip below the second apron, allowing them to aggregate salaries. This is where this is the fun puzzle piece of the NBA and the NBA trade deadline specifically, especially with the new apron rules. And the Bulls get out of Javon Carter's money. Now, 5-team trade comes to fruition. Suns receive Jimmy Butler. Let's finish this. Jazz receive. Actually, well, we're not even going to include the Jazz in this. It's now just going to be a 4-team trade, I think. But Suns receive Jimmy Butler. Heat receive Chris Middleton. Expiring Bobby Portis. And the 2025 and 2027 first, least favorable of Cavs, Wolves, Jazz. Bucks receive Zach LaVine. And the Bulls receive Bradley Beal and 2029 first round pick, least favorable of Cavs, Wolves, Jazz. Ultimately, this is the deal, okay? This is how things would look. This is how things would work. And it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And it would very much shake up the NBA. It would make the Phoenix Suns a whole lot better in the short term, but also have a lot of long-term risk. This is kind of the trade package that we're thinking. that's going to possibly happen. So let me know in the comment section right now below what you think about this possible trade outcome. I want to hear everybody's thoughts on it right now. Venkata says Iowa to the Clippers in the same deal. I would assume it would definitely be a helpful piece for the Clippers for sure. Jimmy McGill says, why would the Bulls want to do that? This is a great question and one that I definitely need to address. I'm very glad you asked. This is a great question because this is where a lot of people will have pushback. First of all, the reason that the Bulls are willing to do this, Zach LaVine's contract, 3 years long. Bradley Beal's contract, 3 years long. The difference annually between those two players is $6 million. Getting out of Javon Carter, who makes $6.5 million, makes this a doable thing. Ultimately, the Bulls, who aren't really in line for cap space this year or next summer anyway, so in the 2025 or 2026 off seasons, having Bradley Beal instead of Zach LaVine really doesn't hurt them that much. And in fact, with how well Zach LaVine's been playing, this might even help the Bulls tank a little bit. And again, you're netting a first round pick in 2029 as a result of this. So you're getting draft compensation. And if we know anything about how the last few years have gone with Zach LaVine on the trade market, there hasn't been a collection of realistic suitors that are willing to give up draft equity for him given his contract and current situation. So the Suns, using these 3 first-round picks, are able to incentivize Miami with 2 first-round picks and also incentivize the Bulls with 1 first-round pick, which honestly, I didn't think the Heat would get 2 firsts for Jimmy Butler. I did not think the Bulls would get 1 first-round pick for Zach LaVine. And Phoenix is the fool, none the wiser in this trade, once again, giving up more draft picks than they ever should. I did not expect Bradley Beal to net a whole bunch of pick swaps with his no-trade clause from Washington. Phoenix and Matt Ishbia continue to be the team that provides these packages to teams that don't have the other packages anywhere else. And Phoenix, out of desperation, will make this kind of trade. Now, it does hinge on a lot of stuff. The Bucks, again, have to get below the second apron by dumping Pat Connaughton into cap space. Luckily for Milwaukee, a team like Detroit exists right now. And if we see some type of trade like that happen, there's going to be a real shakeup and a real mix in the NBA that will change pretty much everything. But this is crazy. DJ Hammer says, not sure Beal would want to go to Chicago. I think Beal to the Bucks is more realistic. He'd be happy to play with Giannis and Dame. Here's the thing about Beal, though. Again, he's got his college coach who he likes a ton in Chicago. He has talked on podcasts multiple times about his relationship with Billy Donovan and how much Billy Donovan meant to him as a young man, Florida, the Gators, all that stuff. That's the reason why I continue to say that Chicago is the most sensible spot for Bradley Beal. And I think this type of trade package right here that I shared on the stream just now is probably the only way that the Bulls get a first-round pick for LaVine, the only way that the Suns can find a team to take in Bradley Beal, and the only way that the Heat get 2 first-round picks for Jimmy Butler at this current point in time, which is absolutely crazy. A lot of crazy stuff. And this is a real possibility. Very much a real possibility. But pairing Beal back with Billy Donovan gives this as good of a shot as possible. IMO. And I think that's really the biggest thing. I think if there's a takeaway from this video is, again, and this is, I said this the moment, if you go back to all my trade coverage back when Beal got traded from Washington to Phoenix, I said then, letting him keep his no-trade clause is ridiculous and crazy. And I was one of the few people. I mean, if you go, I guarantee you, if you go back and listen to people talk about the Phoenix Suns trade, any other YouTuber, I guarantee you they're going to say, oh my goodness, the firepower, the championship potential. They're going to outscore everybody. I guarantee you, if you went back and listened to all that, everyone was telling you that, except for me. I was saying, this is not going to work. It's not going to be very good. They're too small. They don't even have a real point guard. They got it this year in Tyus Jones, of course, but it's Tyus Jones. He's flawed. He's not a great point guard. He's an okay one. All of these issues still stem from trading for Bradley Beal and letting him keep his no-trade clause. That trade was horrible. I said at the time, it was unbelievably bad. And it made no sense for them to actually do. Other than Matt Ishbia looking to act out of desperation, he treats real life basketball like 2K, where you can just trade whatever and who cares, someone else will have to deal with the results. I'm telling you, fan attendance in 2029 in Phoenix is not going to be very good. I don't think the Footprint Center is going to be selling out at the end of the decade here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. The Suns are very, very old. No, the Suns could not sign free agents. They can, but they can't sign the buyout ones, the guys who are making more than the mid-level exception right now, if that's what you're asking, Rams fan. Sam says Beal and Dame in the backcourt versus the Cavs would be a laughing stock to watch Mitchell and Garland go for 40. Yeah, that's the thing. You just can't. I think, like, even though Levine's not a great defender, he's at least bigger and more athletic than Beal. I just think this is, like, realistically the best possible outcome. Also, if you guys aren't following on Twitter, make sure to go do so right now. I'll show your profile here if you go follow over on Twitter right now. We've been getting a lot of followers over the last couple of days or so. Been stepping up big time. Milwaukee Cards here says, Sheldon, could you be the Bucks GM by chance? Would absolutely love it. We'd have a lot of stuff to fix. I'm not gonna lie. The Bucks have been playing better as of late, especially the last month and a half or so. They've been playing a bit better, but I'd have I don't know. I would love to be the person that oversees the Giannis trade, because I think this is going to not be a popular thought either. But the moment the Bucks trade Giannis Antetokounmpo, they're going to be very, very well poised for the future, because they're going to get a lot of stuff for Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I mean a lot. WCH says, will the Suns trade back for Cam Johnson? Nope, they don't have the assets to do that, really. I mean, and the issue here, too, let's go back over to the trade finder, or to the trade machine, just so you guys can look at this, too, because this is an important thing to talk about. And some of you, if you haven't been watching the videos on the channel specifically, remember, after this precursor trade, you might not understand all of the trade news and all the stuff that's going on with the second apron and all the rules. And that's why I exist. I exist to help you guys. That's the whole reason I'm here, is to show you everything you need to know about the NBA. I read the CBA for fun. I'm ridiculous, and I should never do that, but I do because I care too much. Here's the issue. Cam Johnson makes $22.5 million. By rule, since they are a second apron team, the Phoenix Suns cannot combine two player salaries into one trade. So when you look at this situation here, they don't have anyone making more than $22.5 million other than these top three guys. Bradley Beal will not want to play in Brooklyn. Yusuf Nurkic does not make enough. Grayson Allen does not make enough. By rule, basically, Cam Johnson cannot be a Phoenix Sun again this year at the trade deadline. So Unlimited says, as a Wizards fan, I'm just sitting back and enjoying the show, as you should be. The Wizards should be extremely happy, and I'm going to show that off here too as well. I'm not even sure if Fanspo is going to have that, actually, if they're going to show what they should have. But they have, so Washington has the right to swap its 2026 first. They have the right to swap 2028. Like, if you're a Washington fan, you should just be very happy, because not only did you get out of this Bradley Beal mess, which was super obviously bad. Like, think about it, the Wizards were winning like 32 to 35 games a year. They were never good with Bradley Beal over the last half decade before trading him. After John Wall's prime passed and injuries kind of overcame his career, they just weren't good anymore. And they traded Bradley Beal for stuff with the worst contract in the NBA, which was honestly insane. So the Wizards rebuild going very well. And if they get Cooper Flagg, oh my goodness, their front court, I'm telling you right now, if they get Cooper Flagg 4 years from now, we're going to be talking about the Wizards as this crazy good up and coming, kind of like how people talk about the Rockets right now. Kind of like how people were talking about the Grizzlies a couple of years ago. That'll be the Washington Wizards. I've been saying it the moment they hired Michael Winger, the moment they traded Bradley Beal. This team is very, very well positioned. Now, they do need lottery luck. The Grizzlies got it with John Morant, right? The Rockets had a bunch of different top picks as well. But there's a lot of really fun things to talk about. Everyone Needs a Smile says, we don't know that the next trade isn't already agreed to, only that it hasn't been reported. Well, that's the thing. That's the whole point of why we're talking through this right now. And the reason the Phoenix isn't making the trade that they made, Phoenix isn't making the trade if they don't have something planned. Big Dog Piston says, now we need a first for Connaughton. He's not expiring. I mean, you're not getting a first to eat salary. I just don't think that's happening in today's NBA, especially not a $9 million salary, to be honest. But ultimately, like, if you're eating 2 salaries for 2 second-round picks, I don't think it's bad at all. Roswell Valdez says, as a Spurs fan, is there anything we are involved in? So, Roswell, this is a great question. I do want to talk about the Spurs just for a second here. I don't really see them getting involved too much in the Jimmy Butler trade. Now, I don't want to rule that out, right? They have like a contract like Zach Collins, who it's not valuable, but it's sizable. It could be used in a trade. Chris Paul, maybe. I don't think that's going to happen. Harrison Barnes, maybe. Don't think that's going to happen. So I don't want to say completely no, there's no chance, but I find it very unlikely that the Spurs are involved in this. But one thing San Antonio will do, and I almost guarantee it, this trade deadline, they're going to be very aggressive looking for teams to give up swap options. And honestly, they're going to make a trade very similar to what the Jazz just did, where they're going to look at opportunities to improve their draft collection. They're going to look at opportunities to get future unprotected picks, just like Utah just did. And I think Utah is one of the big winners of the trade. I do want to go show that as well here quick. Let me go back to my trade grades. Here's what I thought. I thought the Suns, here's the thing. I've been very harsh on Phoenix. You guys know I've been very harsh on Phoenix. Okay. I don't think the Suns have been very well ran. The one thing I will say, they've been extremely creative. They are looking for every single wrinkle, every single little room to finagle under the CBA imaginable. So I have to give them credit here. They get some credit. They get an A-. They effectively tripled their quantity of tradable first-round draft picks. This opened up a bunch of flexibility to make moves utilizing either the salaries of Bradley Beal, which is predominantly what I expect to happen. If with it being, some type of trade for Jimmy Butler, that's what we're going to assume at this point in time. Otherwise, they could find other trades, right? They could do 1 or 2 first-round picks with Jusuf Nurkic and target some player in the realm of $15 to $18 million. They could also, maybe attach a first-round pick to Grayson Allen to find another $15 million type player out on the market. Now, I'm not exactly sure what those packages are. I think the Jimmy Butler deal is the more likely one to actually come to fruition. It reeks of desperation. It reeks of a lot of long-term woes, honestly, if they make that kind of trade, but that's what I expect at this point. But I have to give them an A- because they're creative. They found a way to turn 1 future first-round pick into 3. And that, is pretty impressive. But like I've said always on the channel too, quality outweighs quantity when it comes to draft selections. And the Jazz, in my opinion, really upgraded their quality with very little long-term risk. Trading the least favorable of 3 first-round picks, which means they're probably all going to be in the back end of the 20s, given the fact that it's Minnesota and Cleveland, and then also, Utah's hoping that by 2029 that they're a pretty good team. They might get an awesome pick. Like, who knows if that 2031 first is going to be great, elite. It might be the first pick in the draft. It could be the 7th pick. It could be, maybe Phoenix finds a way to reach middle ground, and maybe Ishbia's spending keeps them somewhat relevant. Maybe they're, setting the 16th pick. Nonetheless, I think it's a risk worth taking, and especially since the Jazz have so many up-and-coming first-round picks, making this kind of trade actually will help them long-term because it opens their flexibility a little bit further out, pushing some of these picks back into 2031, and then also giving them the option to allow some of their current young players to develop. They already have so many young guys, whether it be Bryce Sensabaugh, Isaiah Collier, you think about Kyle Filipowski, Walker Kessler. I mean, they just have so many guys, right? Cody Williams, another guy. Keontae Jordan. I mean, their roster is littered with young players. So they're giving some of their current players time to develop by trading some of these more near future first-round picks, like the 2025 one, for example. And I think they're all in all coming out pretty happy with the overall result of that. Appreciate everyone for being in here. If you guys are not yet so far, make sure to subscribe. Everyone needs a smile. Says, at Utility Sports, are you surprised this wasn't OKC? Could have easily given very similar picks, and they've been upgrading picks when too many come to fruition. Exactly. Like, this is exactly what OKC is doing. This is what San Antonio is doing. I'm not completely surprised it wasn't OKC because I think if you look at the way that the Utah Jazz and San Antonio Spurs are operating, those 3 teams specifically in the West are all kind of mirroring each other in the way that they make moves. The Spurs have been very helpful in 3-team trades. You think about the Kings acquiring DeMar DeRozan in the offseason. The Spurs were the 3rd-team facilitator. You think back to the 2023 offseason. Who was involved in the Grant Williams trade from Boston to Dallas? It was San Antonio. Utah has been trying to get involved as a 3rd team as well. You think about some of their creative deals. The Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji trade with Toronto last year to get a first-round pick, which ended up becoming Isaiah Collier. These teams have all been creative in their own right. Obviously, OKC did it with Dallas and Washington to help get Daniel Gafford to the Mavericks from the Wizards. So, while I think OKC could have been a team to get involved, it doesn't shock me that it was Utah. And I'm honestly just as equally surprised maybe that it wasn't San Antonio, because all of those teams are working very, very hard to get extra future draft compensation. BMAX says Cody Williams is a year away from being a year away. Exactly. And this is what, Utah having more picks in 2025 is not going to allow for more extra time for development for some of these young guys. Pushing that pick out to 2031 keeps their trade flexibility open. It keeps a lot of different options open for them moving forward. Duran said, yeah, Cody Williams, I think 3 years away. And that's the thing, here's the thing. And this is, as a basketball community, this is one thing I'm going to urge you guys. This is not really related to the Suns or Jazz trade, but let's hold more patience for these young players. I think especially guys like Victor Wembanyama, Luka Doncic, their transitions to the league have really kind of skewed the perspective for people, especially on social media, when you're seeing guys who aren't panning out immediately. Like, look at Scoot Henderson. In his last 4 games, he's scoring 20-plus points. He's been tremendous. And people, at the beginning of this year, after the first week of the season, he wasn't having great games again, and people were saying bust. He's 20 years old. Let's hit the brakes a little bit. Think about your life when you were 20 years old, if you're older than 20, right? Did you have everything figured out? No, it takes a little bit of time, especially when you're trying to play basketball in the best league in the world. I think we have to give guys more time, and I think Cody Williams is a player who's like that for sure. I'm still very high on his long-term future. I think there's a lot of tools and skills to work with there, but he's not there yet, and that's okay. Dejected Cards fan says, hit the like. You guys heard him. Everyone smash that like button right now. I'm actually going to check the number of likes on the stream. Let's see how many we're at right now. 45 likes. We can do way better than that. We have 290 people watching live right now. Let's at least get to 75 likes, which means only 30 of you have to hit the like button right now. Everyone do it right now. Depleted Mind, welcome to the stream. Glad to have you in here. He says, go Spurs, go. Unlimited says, turns out the Utah Jazz are trading for my second cousin. It's pretty tough, I'm not going to lie. If you think about it, 2031 first-round pick, what is that right now? That's like a 6th grader, maybe a 7th grader. Hey, it could be a high school kid if he goes to college for multiple years. We'll see. But Michael P. says, after Tuesday's trade, the Jazz now have 11 first-round picks in the next 7 years. The 2031 pick they received from the Suns is unprotected. And I think, again, key words here. Baxter, welcome to the stream, by the way. Looks like a big Phoenix Suns fan. The key words in these trades today, and this is what everyone needs to keep in mind. I'm even going to tweet this again. The key words in today's trade. Unprotected regarding the Suns 2031 first. Least favorable regarding the draft assets Utah sent. The Jazz essentially run zero real risk here. The Suns embody all the risk. Desperate times. That's all I'm going to say. Okay. I think desperation is playing out. Okay. I think that's the key words. Yeah, Mavs. Maybe the Mavs could swoop in for Bobby Portis. Maybe, sure. But nonetheless, this is what we're talking about right now. And these key words are really, really important to remember. Emil says it is okay for the Suns because they're worst in drafting high pick in the draft. Aiden, Bender, Jackson, Len. Well, by that logic, you might as well not have draft picks at all, right? Just get rid of them. That's what they're doing now. I'm telling you, that's not a better route. The Brooklyn Nets tried that with the Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum picks. It didn't work out very good. Root Crew wants to know, are the Bucks still in on Jimmy Butler? I don't really think so, honestly. I don't think the Bucks are going to be a Jimmy Butler shooter, really. I think the Bucks landing Zach LaVine is really the best likelihood, honestly. Is there DJ Hammer here says, is there any truth to the Sixers being unable to trade for or even amend protections on the 2025 pick? Ode to OKC. There's a tweet by Mike O'Connor, but I'm not buying it. Here's the thing. So the funny thing is this pick stems from the Al Horford salary dump. Okay, this shows you how smart Sam Presti is, getting all these future first-round picks to eat salary. Everyone's like, oh, well, if we're going to eat salary, we need to get getting anything you can for salary if it's a far-out pick. It just always has ways to come back and be a really beneficial thing to do for rebuilding teams. If you're a rebuilding team or a middling team, you should always be trying to get extra draft capital just for eating salary. It's like the freest way to get draft picks. You don't even give up talent in this outcome most of the time. Like, and I think for the Thunder, they'd be willing to amend picks, but what they would want is more picks. And this is the scary thing: is if you're the Sixers, you own some of the Clippers stuff, you own some future stuff. Do you want to give up more future stuff to amend the pick this year? I don't know. It just gets scary. Daryl Morey might do it because Daryl Morey doesn't care about the future, because worst case he'll get fired. So it's a great question, DJ. It is, but I don't know. It's kind of scary. And to Michael's point here, to quote the great Bruce Arians, no risk, no biscuits. Like, here's the thing. Phoenix kind of has to do this. They suck. Phoenix is not a good team. Like, they're an okay team. They're not very good. Like, do they have really any shot at contending right now if they go into the playoffs with Bradley Beal on their roster and Yusuf Nurkic on their roster? I mean, you guys know the answer to that. I don't have to spell that out for you. You guys know the answer. So, Kurt Golson says, appreciate you looking forward to more trade deadline streams. Very, very excited. Remember, we are just a couple weeks away from that. In fact, I think like 10 days. Ziaco says, hey, we are underrated on good low picks, Kamara and Dunn. Well, you guys didn't even pick Tumani Kamara. You just happened to get lucky. Well, no, you guys did pick. You traded him to Portland. For some reason in my head, I just I don't even know why I thought what I just thought. But yeah, Ryan Dunn was awesome, and I don't even know why you guys traded Tumani Kamara, because he would have been good for you guys too. But sorry, Ziaco, I had a little bit of a brain fart there for me. The random pizza guy says, do you think Jimmy to Phoenix has any real implications for Houston, or do they probably just not care much? This is another really fantastic question. Pizza guy, very thankful you're in here, because I'm very, very glad you asked this question. Let's go back over to the trade machine, and you might be saying, okay, well, we're still on Suns Wizards. Let's go over to Suns Rockets. And would you look at that? Okay, so let's just say in a vacuum, right, that Jimmy Butler ends up in Phoenix. Okay, Jimmy Butler is 34 years old, I believe. I should know that. 35. He just turned 35. He's 35 years old. Okay, Jimmy Butler is 35. Kevin Durant is 36. And let's look at what the Rockets owe. Phoenix swap option in 2025. They've got Phoenix first in subsequent years, 2027. They have swap rights with Brooklyn in 2027. And they have this pick via either Dallas and or Phoenix in 2029. So with all of that considered, the Rockets, who are second in the Western Conference for a majority of the season, and have a bunch of their own young talent, which is already really good, and Reed Shepherd to boot coming up soon, hopefully, and playing a bigger role for them in the future. They have all these valuable draft picks. And I'm telling you right now, the fact that they're going to own 2027, 2029 picks for a team that has 36-year-old Durant and 35-year-old Jimmy Butler, well, what that lines up for at some point in time is this guy for this guy plus one of these other guys, okay, and the picks. I've been saying it. I've been saying it since last offseason. At some point in time, we're going to see something centered around this. I think. We'll see. It might not happen soon. Trading for Jimmy Butler might postpone that by a year, right? But I'm telling you right now, the Rockets are very well poised. And for implications, the Rockets should be smiling. If the Suns trade for Jimmy Butler, the Rockets should be very, very happy. I think. King Nacho says, I'd rather pay Nurk for 2 years than Patrick Williams for 5. Yeah, Patrick Williams is shooting sub 40% from the field this year. So Tomas says, I think Miami will keep Beal and try to trade Duncan Robinson and or Rozier for expiring contracts. I don't think Beal and Hero together would be good. If you've been watching Beal and Booker together, Beal and Hero is not going to be very good. Alex says Suns projected to win 37 games right now. If they add Jimmy, maybe they win 45. They'd be much better with Jimmy Butler. I completely agree with this, which is why they'll probably do what we've talked about today, which is, let me go back over to it. This is why they're probably going to do what we've talked about, which is some big elaborate trade, something like this, that is completely crazy, but desperate, right? And gives them a chance to improve their team. It does, for the short term. Again, if I've talked about it multiple times in the past. Let me see if I can even find it. From @_utility sports. Ishbia. Let's see if I can find this here now. All right, that's not going to work the way I was hoping it would. Well, nonetheless, I've talked about it at length in the past. There's going to be an Ishbia rule which prevents new owners from making big trades. They're like, it's gonna prevent new owners from trading first round picks 4 or 5 years from now. But ultimately, something like this, I think, would make a lot more sense. Alfred here says, I don't even want Devin Booker anymore. He isn't a legit number one option. Just so we're all clear here, because I just want to make sure, Booker wasn't having the best beginning of the season. Over his last 6 games, he has 5 30-point games. He has 5 30-point games, and he's having a career worst season, and it's because of a coaching change, and he's got a not good team around them. So I'm just saying right now, I think if we see something come to fruition, it'll be something like this, where a lot of stuff happens. We're going to have a huge shakeup, a huge change, and a lot of crazy stuff's going to happen. Hopefully everyone is enjoying the live stream. I'm checking the likes now. We got exactly to 75, which now you guys know what I want. I want to get to 100 likes. Let's get to 100 likes right now. Everyone go smash that like button. Right now, let's see what we notice here on the channel. Also, if you guys haven't already, one thing I'm going to do here as well, let me go over to the content portion. Let me get this set up right, because I want to make sure that you guys are able to see what I want to show, which is this right here. Go check out this video. It's my 2025 NBA trade deadline predictions video. It's got 12,000 views almost. I uploaded it yesterday. Make sure to go check that out. Also, there's going to be more trade guides on the channel. A lot of fun stuff to look at. Okay, there's a lot of great content out here. Mock drafts, trade guides, my own 2K series, which has been really fun. And the uploads are going to be very, very frequent over the next couple of weeks, okay? And then, of course, live streams coming up too. So Tana Hayden says the Jazz won't even make this selection. They'll use it in trade way before 2031 once they actually get a couple of high picks in the draft. So this is another great point, Hayden. It's actually not a hot take. Shout out to Hayden. Let's get some hype for Hayden down in the chat right now. You guys have been killing it. I'm not even going to lie. Your comments today have been excellent. Your comments have been absolutely excellent. The Jazz are looking for a superstar. They're looking for a player to put with Lauri Markkanen. And what their hope is that they suck just enough to get a good pick in 2025, a very good pick in 2026. If they can walk out with maybe Cooper Flagg and Darren Peterson, Cooper Flagg and AJ Dembonsa, they can walk out with Dylan Harper and maybe Cam Boozer. Whatever combination of players in 2025 and 2026 drafts they get, they're hoping that from that point, they have a real infrastructure, and then they can trade all of these other picks, the Suns pick, all these other stuff, to go get some other player, some other superstar, some other top 10, top 15 player in the world. Something Danny Ainge clearly likes to do. He did it with Kevin Garnett, for example, back in 07 leading into the 08 championship. This is a great comment, and this is 100% right. The Jazz are a sleeping giant waiting to do something. Unlimited said that Beal would waive his no trade clause to Milwaukee. So let's look at this now. Felizardo, thank you for that. Bradley Beal is open to waiving his no trade clause to join the Bucks per Gambo 987. This is an Arizona reporter. Okay. Milwaukee was a finalist alongside the Suns to get Beal originally in 2023. I mean, here's the thing though, and this is what I'm going to talk about again. If Milwaukee wants to acquire a salary greater than Chris Middleton's, which is roughly $31 million, the Bucks need to dip out of and stay below the second apron in any trade. The actual mechanics of this is where me knowing all these stupid rules that are all brand new this year is super valuable, hopefully to you guys, because you guys can watch and just learn it very quickly instead of having to study it. The actual mechanics of this would be salary dumping Pat Connaughton. Let me check one thing really quickly here as well. apron. So the Bucks are Milwaukee is currently from here. Milwaukee could combine salaries of Middleton plus Portis. And if we look at their actual stuff here, let me take a quick gander over there. So Middleton plus Portis get them to $34 million or $44 million. It's still like less than what they would need to be, but plus Marjan plus to get close to Beal's number, essentially. I don't think that would be very good for Milwaukee. I just don't really understand why Milwaukee would want Beal. I guess I really don't understand that. But like they're going to be all the issues Phoenix has with Beal right now is I think I'm sorry, I thought I had my share screen going for that, so I thought you guys could see what I was typing. But here's what I typed. So CBA rules: if Milwaukee wants to acquire a salary greater than Chris Middleton's, the Bucks need to dip out of, and then they'd be hard capped essentially, right? And stay below the second apron in any trade. Milwaukee is currently $6.5 million over the second apron. The actual mechanics of this would be salary dumping Pat Connaughton, who makes $9+ million, to a team like Detroit in a separate deal. And then from there, Milwaukee could aggregate or combine salaries of Middleton plus Portis plus Marjan, for example, to get closer to a number that like would work with Bradley Beal. So, again, this is like, here's the thing. The Phoenix Suns run all the risk. And I just don't know. I would not trade for Bradley Beal. The BMAX says, I joined late. Have you put together a 4-team deal with the Jazz moving Clarkson and Collins in the Butler move? So no, I have not included. So great question here, BMAX. And also thank you for all the support on Twitter. I always appreciate seeing your comments and your replies and everything. But I have not used the Jazz in a 4-team deal. And to me, you know, earlier I tweeted about, and I think this might be part of the tweet that you're referencing from earlier too. Let me go back to my bookmarks. You know, I had predicted the Jazz getting involved with this Jimmy Butler Phoenix Suns stuff, right? Like, the Jazz seemed like a team that really made sense to get involved, given draft picks, given flexibility, and given Danny Ainge's history, right? Here's the thing, though. The fact that this trade got done and wasn't a part of a big collection of trades where the Jazz are just flat out sending picks somewhere, it makes me think that the Jazz might not actually be included in the final result. Now, it's still possible they could be, right? Like, especially Collins' contract, like, it just snaps into trades very, very easily. And the Jazz would be a team willing to make some of those moves like you mentioned here. But the fact that this trade kind of materialized and formulated first without, you know, 3, 4, 5 teams included makes me think that maybe the Jazz won't actually be really centrally included in that final trade. But, of course, they are essentially what made this whole thing possibly tick by making the trade that they've already made now at this point in time. Zach says, what's up, Sheldon? Just hopped in the stream. You think the Phoenix trade indicates they have another trade framework in place? Zach, that's exactly what I believe, and I'm very thankful that you're in here. Let me go over to that now. For those of you who do not know, Zach is killing it in the basketball world, you know, repping the Grizzlies in a way. I'm not going to tell it. It's not my story to tell, but he's doing very, very well, and I'm very happy for him. So shout out to him. But ultimately, Zach, this is what I am kind of thinking here now. And it all stems with the new CBA rules. A lot of stuff has to happen first, but a 3-team trade would first go. Javon Carter gets salary dumped by the Bulls. Pat Connaughton gets salary dumped by the Bucks. 2 second-round picks go to the Pistons, who have the cap space to eat these contracts, essentially, right? Carter could be traded to another team with a room exception. That could be like OKC. You know, Carter's contract, $6.5 million, could be traded almost anywhere. Let's be honest. Pistons use cap space to pick up extra draft capital. Bucks dip below the second apron, allowing them to aggregate salaries, which is why they get rid of Pat Connaughton for nothing. Bulls get out of Javon Carter's money, which becomes important for this because the Bulls turn Zach LaVine into Bradley Beal and a 2029 first. So in aggregate, Javon Carter plus Zach LaVine is essentially Bradley Beal's contract, okay? That is essential to know here. The Suns get Jimmy Butler, clearly the other after, and they use their 3 first-round picks. 2 of them that they just got today, they used 2 of those first-round picks with Miami, who also gets Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis. And the Bucks get Zach LaVine. So the Bucks basically turn Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis and, whatever into Zach LaVine, which is just, I think, a very significant upgrade in the year 2025. I think it's just a huge upgrade. Like Brew Crew saying here, I don't want Beal in Milwaukee. Here's the thing. It possibly could be. If the Bucks do that, I think it would be a massive mistake. But Norman Rad says, smash that like button. Carlos Diaz says, please don't use Cidery as a reliable source. He's an aggregator and just says what everyone else has already reported for his own. So that's the thing here, Carlos. It's when I'm in the position I'm in right now, I'm getting fed sources, and I'm also at a spot where I'm trying to run a stream and speak the entire time. I've been speaking for an hour straight and trying to show my screen and talk about trades and all this. So it's not that I'm trying to overlook the actual real reporters, but sometimes it's really easy to go to where I know the information is going to be, which is what is going on. Thomas Felizardo says apparently Toronto's open to take on Pat Connaughton. Brett Siegel doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll be point blank. Does not know. He does not know. So I don't want to be rude. Don't trust the reporting there. Last year, I was covering the Timberwolves, and last year he reported that the Timberwolves had interest in Bogdan Bogdanović of the Hawks, and there was no actual salary way for Minnesota to do that because Minnesota was a team that had so much spending, and they didn't have any of those mid-sized contracts to really trade for Bogdanović. So just be careful with following that reporting. I was in the building. I was in the locker rooms last year with the Wolves. I knew that was not happening. BMAX says, I will say Jazz are sitting Sexton, Collins, and Clarkson lately. Seems as much of a trade maneuver as a tank maneuver. Something seems imminent. Very possible. And this is the thing too. Even though this is the thing. Utah has players who are, I think, valued around the league a bit. Like Sexton could get traded a number of places. If he's not included in a Heat trade, it doesn't mean I don't think the Jazz are going to trade. That the Jazz won't trade him. If you saw my trade deadline predictions video, I talked about Sexton a lot in that because I thought Sexton is a very, very, very acquirable player in the market and a player who could help a bunch of teams. Ben says Bucks wouldn't do this trade. They can shed off salary easier without gutting their roster. I mean, shedding salary with Giannis Antetokounmpo is not going to keep Giannis Antetokounmpo there. I'll tell you that for sure. If you want to keep Giannis, you have to make win now moves. That's been very, very clear. He's made that very clear. Julio Escobar says Zach LaVine needs to become a Piston. I mean, I think, again, that could make sense. Depleted Mind says, I know Spurs never do big trades, but what do you think they will do? They'll get involved as the third or fourth team in trades and get picks for it. Same thing they've been doing. You think about it with the Grant Williams sign and trade to Dallas. You think about the DeMar DeRozan sign and trade to Sacramento. They keep jumping in. They keep getting extra assets. They got 2031 and 2030 first-round picks, swaps, and picks from Minnesota in the draft. The Spurs are doing what Sam Presti has done. The Spurs are doing what Utah just did and getting future stuff so that when Wembanyama is in his prime and possibly very likely winning a championship or multiple, they'll have other draft picks to continue either building talent by trades or just drafting and adding top-end picks around him. So that's kind of where I think that's where it's at. King Nacho, this is a great point. This is one I need you guys to all realistically think about. Okay, this is, again, you guys are killing it in the comments, but this is something you're overlooking, King Nacho. The Bulls take Beal when they already have the younger, cheaper, better Beal. This is exactly the problem, though. The Bulls, let's pull up the NBA standings quick. Let's just go take a look. You're exactly saying the problem. The Bulls are 10th in the East at 19-25. If they were just 5 games worse, they would be 12th in the East. Just 5 games. Having a worse version of Zach LaVine will help them long term. Being worse right now is everything Chicago needs to do. If they can get a first-round pick and be worse, it solves 2 problems. It helps their draft pick this year, and it helps them long-term with an extra draft pick to boot. It's a no-brainer, in my opinion, if you're Chicago. You're not going to get anything for Zach LaVine. We've seen that last year. How many years has Zach LaVine been on the trade block, on the trade market, available for trade? I've been doing live streams here on the channel, and some of you have been with me here for the last 3 years doing them. I've been doing them long enough to know Zach LaVine's been readily available and not traded for. And when those two things are simultaneously true, what that means is there's no market. There's no market for a player as good as Zach LaVine. Zach LaVine is a good player. I think, yes, he's got a contract that makes him a less appealing player. Zach LaVine is very good at basketball. Those two things often get in the way of each other, make it hard for people to accurately talk about players and who's good and who's not. But here's the thing. The Bulls, if they could have gotten a bunch of stuff for Zach LaVine, they would have already done it. They can't. This is their one way to get stuff for Zach LaVine that actually might have value. Getting a 2029 first for Zach LaVine is not the worst thing in the world. If they got offered this last year from some team, they probably would have done it. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Again, why would the Bucks ever do this? Yeah, I don't really understand. I just don't think. I just don't know why the Bucks would do this, and that's exactly been my main point on that. Is I just don't. Like, you just aren't going to get a first-round pick for salary. That's one of the funny things, too, to me, is, like, you're not getting a first-round pick for eating Pat Connaughton's contract. It's not that bad of a contract. B-Max says, I wonder what Zach LaVine would look like with Lauri Markkanen. That's actually hilarious, honestly. For a second, I almost completely overlooked the Bulls tenure thing for a second. I'm glad you included that thing because that's actually hilarious. Ben says, which teams would take on Bradley Beal other than the Bulls? Well, this is the issue too. Like, let's just I'm going to change my share screen here, and we're just going to go over to the standings, okay? And the whole point of going to the standings is so we can look at what teams would do it. Cavs, no interest in Beal. Celtics, no interest in Beal. Knicks, no interest in Beal. Bucks, maybe, right? There's the reporting. Pacers, zero interest. Hawks, zero interest. Magic, zero interest. Heat, zero interest. Pistons, maybe a little bit, maybe, probably not. Bulls, we talked about. Sixers, definitely not. They don't have any real way of doing that. The Nets would not have any interest. They are looking to use cap space this offseason. It's the worst kept secret in the NBA. The Hornets, I mean, it's Charlotte. They're not going to do it. Toronto, no. Washington, I mean, they're the ones who traded him away. So, no. OKC, no. Rockets, no. Grizzlies, no. Nuggets, no. Clippers, no. Lakers, probably not. I mean, Rob Pelinka's done some crazy things, including trading all of his stuff for Russell Westbrook one time. Who, a lot. Again, if you go back on YouTube like that, I talked about this with the Beal trade. I'm telling you, if your favorite YouTuber isn't me, I'm telling you, your favorite YouTuber was probably saying the Russell Westbrook trade was good for the Lakers. And I'm not talking about the one that was trading him away. I'm talking about getting him. Some people just don't know ball. The Mavericks don't want Beal. Kings would not want Beal. Wolves would not want Beal. Warriors would not want Beal. Spurs would not want Beal. I mean, like, the Jazz or Pelicans would maybe be willing to eat it, but like, really, like, no one wants Beal, and the teams that are willing to take on Beal are expecting stuff, which is why the Bulls would be getting a first-round pick to take on Beal. King Nacho says the other problem with Beal to the Bulls is that Beal thinks he's good and wants to play on a contender, so he would never prove it. Well, here's the thing, King Nacho. I don't know if you've been watching the Phoenix Suns. The Bulls are 19-25. The Suns aren't much better at 21-21. Okay, he's not on a contender right now, so no one really wants Beal. Zach here saying LaVine is really good though. If we're under the old CBA, it'd be a positive asset to be traded. Well, see, that's the thing. Like, and that's where I completely agree, Zach. Like, I think LaVine is probably one of the most underrated players in the league because people look at his contract and the whole narrative around him is no one wants him because of his contract, so he must suck. That's not the reality. He's an awesome player. He's having a great, I mean, really great season for the Bulls. Really great season. He's not valuable around the league, though, because we are in the second apron. The second apron era, of the CBA, where these huge contracts for a third best player on your team is just really difficult to deal with. And because of that, it's just the market's not there. If you look at the players that have been getting traded, it's all guys making less than $20 million. Dorian Finney-Smith, D'Angelo Russell. You look at the Dennis Schroeder trade, right? All of the trades we've seen so far, Nick Richards, including players, have been players making less than $20 million. That's not accidental. No, I don't think the Mavs are really shopping Daniel Gafford. I think they are going to keep Daniel Gafford. Unless, here's the thing, big what if here. Unless the only way they trade Daniel Gafford is if they're getting Herb Jones, which I don't think will happen. So, Rogue Brothers said, could you explain to me how the Suns could trade the 2029 first without a 2028 and 2030 first? I'm confused. So Rogue Brothers, yeah, this is a good question. It all comes down to swap options. So they owe swap options in 2028 and 2030, which means they technically own a first round pick. It's just going to be the later of whichever one in that year. So for example, let's say you and I made a trade, Rogue, and I traded you my 2025 first and my 2027 first. Now with the stepping rule, that means I have to have a pick in 2026, but it doesn't specify if it has to be my pick or your pick or what kind of pick it has to be. It just has to be a pick. So if I offered you a swap option in 2026 as well, I would still technically by rule have a 2026 first. It would just be the lesser valuable one of the two, and you would get to have the more valuable pick, which is what Phoenix ultimately did with the 2028 and 2030 picks, while also still having traded out their own 2029 first in the trade for Kevin Durant. Jacob here says, oh yeah, exactly. Yep. This is exactly it. So Jacob, shout out to you as well. Appreciate your comments all the time. Appreciate you tagging me on Twitter on certain stuff. Really appreciate you, my man. View says, do you actually think Robert Williams could get shipped to Houston? I think that's a real possibility. Ime Udoka and Robert Williams spent a good deal amount of time together the other day after Portland faced Houston. Not firm reporting on that. Not saying that a trade's imminent. Just saying the two were talking for a long time after the game. Boucher to the Mavs for Maxi Kleba. If the Mavs trade Maxi Kleba, it's going to be for a better player than Chris Boucher. I like Boucher. I think Boucher could help Dallas. Don't think it'll be for him, though. Maxi Kleba, very well liked in the Mavs organization. Kind of like Dwight Powell, which is why Dwight Powell continues to be a Maverick and why Maxi Kleba will continue to probably be a Maverick unless something really essential comes up where it's like trading away Dorian Finney-Smith and the Mavs just feel like they have to do it. Alfred says, good question. I was just about to ask Robert Williams to Rockets. Again, I think that's a real possibility, one that we're definitely going to have to keep our eyes on for sure. Ben says, think it would be better for the Bucks to go for Lonzo. Here's the thing. Ben, I agree with you that going after a huge player, going after another huge contract, I'm not trying to defend each team's decision-making. But when we're talking about possibilities, I do think LaVine to Milwaukee or Beal to Milwaukee is feasibly possible. And I think there's a difference between, here's the thing. You guys know, I mean, if you've been watching the channel for a long time, you know I've been covering a lot of stuff that I don't agree with and talking about, I could see this team doing it. Now, would I do it? No. But I could see the team doing it. And, I've talked about that at length with Phoenix. I talked about that with Milwaukee. I did not like the Damian Lillard trade for the Bucks. There's a lot of trades that have happened that I did not like, but it didn't change the reality that they happened. And, it's not a fantasy football league where I get to play commissioner and veto trades. So that's kind of the reality with where we're at right now. Tomas says, what teams could be interested in Nurkic plus a first-round pick? So again, this is where I think the limitations with some of the second apron rules make it really hard for Phoenix, because let's just say, for example, that Phoenix really wanted Jakob Poeltl. Okay, let's say they wanted to trade Nurkic and one of these new first-round picks for Jakob Poeltl. We go look at the Toronto Raptors, and well, shoot, Jakob Poeltl makes $19.5 million. Jusuf Nurkic makes 18.1. By rule, they can't trade the two of them because the Suns cannot aggregate salaries. And, well, guess what? Jakob Poeltl makes more money than Jusuf Nurkic. So no trade can actually happen here. Renee says, yeah, I absolutely see the Clippers getting involved somehow to gain a star quality player. I think the Clippers are more likely to go after a smaller player, actually. And the reason I believe that specifically, if you look at the apron rules and where the Clippers currently are, they're actually hard capped at the first apron, which means they can only take in about $4.8 million more salary from where they're at. So I don't see the Clippers going after a bigger player, to be honest. Jacob here says possible trades no one is reporting about that you think would be super beneficial for both teams. That's a great question. One that I think let me find one of the ones I really liked. I think this is one that makes, I think, a ton of sense. And honestly, Zach, if you're still in here, I'm really curious your thoughts on this. One that I think makes a lot of sense for everyone involved here is going to center around Marcus Smart and Jake LaRavia for Cam Johnson. And then we're going to throw in, picks. Like, and the thing is, you could argue maybe like G.G. Jackson has to be in here, right? Like some young player maybe would, the Nets would want some other young player in this. But something like this is what I think could make some real serious sense. Maybe even a second round pick or two. Just some type of deal where Cam Johnson goes to the Grizzlies, really rounds out their starting rotation, and the Nets get 2 first-round picks that they're reportedly wanting. But here's the thing: we've heard about the Nets a lot, and Cam Johnson. We haven't really heard the Grizzlies mentioned since the Dorian Finney-Smith trade kind of fizzled out between these two. I think just naturally, Cam Johnson's a great fit into what Memphis has. So, and Ben, I do think that the Grizzlies do want to see how G.G. Jackson looks, but I think this would be like a really significant upgrade for their current roster and like playoff hopes this year. So that's the thing is, like, you can be patient. Ben, I think you're right on this too, is that they are being patient presently, but this is one issue too. Like, for years, people have been saying, well, the Grizzlies have a huge window. Being patient in your huge window might just mean you'll never actually see it come to fruition, which is kind of the danger of being overly patient in the NBA. Is it's hard to win a championship. It's really, really hard to win a championship if you don't push your chips in. So that's one of the key things here. Oh, man. Very interested to see what you guys all have to say. Luca K says, would you mind to take a look at the Jimmy trade I just put together? Tag me on Twitter. Links in the description. Make sure you guys are all following me over there on that. Thomas says, Boucher and Mitchell for Nurk and a first. See, that's something that could, in theory, make some sense for Phoenix to do. Chris Boucher and Davion Mitchell for Nurkic and a first. Like, Davion Mitchell could help them defensively. So he would be an awesome point of attack guy for them. True Sports Life says, you think the Jazz could find a good trade to move off of John Collins? I definitely think that's a realistic possibility. Alex says, why don't teams trade coaches anymore? It was already kind of rare to begin with. The most recent one, I think, was Doc Rivers to the Clippers, right? And when that happened, I mean, I was young when that happened. I was maybe a teenager, maybe even a little bit younger than a teenager when that actually happened. I might have been like 12. I probably was like 13 or 14. But before that, I'd never even heard of a coach getting traded. So Jimmy McGill says, could you do a quick mock trade involving the Kings? So the Kings could also be a Cam Johnson suitor, right? Yeah, Jimmy, thanks for being in here and asking great questions. I really appreciate your questions a ton as well. But so the Kings could be a great Cam Johnson landing spot. But when it comes to other players that I think could make sense for Sacramento, like the one thing Sacramento is already really, I think, talented with is their guard play. Like, you look at Fox, DeRozan, Monk, and Keon Ellis, and then also Devin Carter just returned. Like, they don't need a guard. So this is where they run into issues, though. It's hard to find wings that are good that the team that has them doesn't want already. That's where Cam Johnson's like going to be probably the cream of the crop this year. And then that's where, kind of the market dries up a little bit. Like, obviously, they had Harrison Barnes last year. Like, Portland with Jeremy Grant, I mean, like, you guys know how I feel about Jeremy Grant. I just don't love him as a player. Like, Matisse Thybulle could be a really cheap option to like get involved with. Maybe something centered around Kevin Huerter's contract and, a couple of seconds and, like whatever else has got to be included in here. Like some other little bit of salary going from Portland, right? Whatever you want to include. Something like this. This trade won't work financially for Portland as is. You'd have to include another salary, but like that's maybe like a little, like, I'm just trying to think of quick ones. Like, you're looking for wing help and probably defensive help. The Jazz, like something bigger for John Collins, I mean, would be interesting. Like, again, he makes $26.5 million though, and this is where you run into trade difficulties. Like, if you're going to do Herter and like Trey Lyles, Like, it's just the Jazz, like something like this maybe could come together and you do like 2 second-round picks or something. Like, and the thing is, Jazz fans won't like this because you're taking Kevin Huerter's contract, which isn't good, and then you're taking only second-round picks, and like Jazz fans won't love this, to be honest. Even though it says the Jazz would win more and the Kings would win less, but it's kind of where it's at right now. Rogue Brother said, question, if the Suns swap their 2028 and 2030, wouldn't they be able to trade those now? Yeah, like, but they would be able to, but I guess they would be able to, right? Well, yeah, wait, Rogue, I need to review where the Suns are at right now. To be honest, it's late. I've been streaming for an hour and a half, and I wasn't really prepared for a draft pick trade today. Like, obviously, you guys know I've been going through preparation of this for weeks and honestly months at this point. But I need to, Rogue, let me look into this and come back with this question for the trade deadline live streams, and I will have the answer for that. Because I think that you're definitely not 2030. Like you're saying, definitely not 2030 because of the 2031 pick being owed. I'd have to look at their draft pick collection now. Like, actually, because I haven't looked at it since they made the trade. So, Jacob says, I love Robert Williams on the Rockets, but I was also thinking about Colin Sexton today. 42% from 3, ball handling are 2 things Rockets need, especially while Reed develops. Possible. I mean, again, the Rockets have a collection of expiring salaries. They have Landale, Steven Adams, they have Jeff Green, Jayshawn Tate. They could get to any guy between $7 million to $28 million roughly in the NBA. So, I would say, like, the one thing is about, like, Houston is anyone that they really want, they could go try and get. But the one issue I continue running, and why I think Robert Williams, who's been injury prone and his value is at an all-time low right now, probably the reason I think he makes more sense than Colin Sexton having a great year is because the Rockets don't have to give up as much draft equity probably to get Robert Williams. And I also think backup center is more of a need for them than guard play anyway, because really, like, come playoff time, Fred VanVleet's going to play 38 minutes. Jalen Green would probably play like 36, 37 minutes. And like you said, like, while Reed is developing, yes, Sexton could be like a nice stopgap for them. But again, does that make sense to give up draft equity if you're just planning on him being kind of like this 1-year rental maybe while you're waiting for Shepherd to take a step forward, which I think he's really close anyway. So John Collins to say, I mean, that's what we kind of just talked about. Like, it's not an actual trade that happened, but we were just spitballing some Kings trades. I don't know. There's a lot more I have to look over before the actual trade deadline live streams. But if you guys are curious, look at my trade guides. It breaks down a lot of some of this stuff. So Mark Wells says, I'm pretty sure the Kings can only trade 1 second-round pick, 2026. Oh, Mark, you're actually, this is completely right. Mark, thank you for reminding me this, Mark, as well. So this is another thing, again, like when I'm just throwing together trades, it's hard because I'm not looking at my like sheets right now that I've been working on. Do you guys want to see something? I vowed to not show this yet, but if you guys are in the stream right now, you get a little sneak peek at something. And now this is going to need some more updating. But I have been putting together a lot of work. And you might be looking at this and saying, what is this? It's not fully done yet, but what you can see here is a collection of draft picks for a whole bunch of teams. Every pick that they own between now and 2031, which is the furthest you can trade it out. This will be prominent in our trade deadline live streams this year. This will be something that comes out very often, okay, and gets used a ton. So keep your eyes out for this. I'm really excited to show this off and use it more. It's something we're going to talk about a lot in the future. This guy right here, okay, I've been putting a lot of work into that. So this is why I'm the GOAT. Exactly. Appreciate you, Unlimited. So yeah, a lot of work's been going into preparation for this year's trade deadline live stream. Honestly, I'm going to say it right now, this is going to be the best trade deadline live stream set ever. Okay. Last year was vastly successful. We had 5,000 people watching live on the day of the trade deadline. I'm telling you, this year is going to be a movie. Okay. It's going to be so much better. I've got so much stuff planned. Okay. I've got a few things in the works. I'm going to actually put out a tweet probably tomorrow, I would guess, on something that I want your guys' help with for this as well. I'm trying to get visitors. during the live stream of, team reporters. So that's something, if you see a tweet from me in the next 24 hours regarding your favorite team reporters or favorite people who cover the team, let me know, okay? Because I will watch for that. And I'm going to be looking for some people to maybe incorporate into the live streams as special guests for maybe 15, 20-minute segments if they're willing. So, there's a lot of great stuff. Ask ChatGPT to propose trades. If you ask now, they're not great. Okay, that's actually crazy. I'm not going to be using ChatGPT. Probably not. If I do that, then you guys might just start using AI to replace me altogether. So, no, don't worry. I've got better trades than ChatGPT at this point in time. But BMax, that's actually hilarious. Xavier says, did you guys read Suns 2025 first round is going to be Cleveland's pick? Yeah, I had talked about that at the beginning of the stream, Xavier, but thanks for sending that in here. It's because the Cavs are the best team in the league right now. It does not clear up their 2030 first round pick, technically, because of the step-in rule. They now owe their 2031 first. So they can't trade their 2030 first because of the step-in rule, Jeremy, but it does, I think, in theory, again, I'm going to have to look at it, but I do think it clears up their 2028 first. So added flexibility in some ways. But I think if I look at the swap options on that, let me go take a look. They might already owe swap options as a result of that. So let me go look at what swap options they owe. So they owe a swap option with the Nets, and then also the Wizards have some control in that as well. So keep that in mind. But a lot of fun stuff coming up at the trade deadline. A lot of crazy stuff that we will be definitely talking about some more. I hope you guys have enjoyed today's live stream. If you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe as well to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe. And reminder, it's literally last. It would be like, exactly. Getting pick 31 would be like just as valuable, essentially, right? Actually, in some ways more valuable because the guarantees and stuff is cheaper, better. And you can put them on two ways and stuff. So you could argue pick 31 is more valuable than pick 30 in the NBA draft, which is kind of stupid, but it's kind of the reality. Don't forget, trade deadline live streams the first week of February. So this is the place you guys want to be. Really appreciate all of you guys so much for hopping in. I know I had a little bit of a late start time today after the trade. I was in the middle of something, so I wasn't able to hop on it right away. But I also want to, real quick, what I want you guys to do is also on my Twitter, when you guys see these posts, I want you guys to engage with them. I want your comments. I want your thoughts. And the one I'm talking about specifically are these, okay? If you guys know NBA University, he has not been posting. He got in trouble with that scandal, the Shot Creator website, selling content that wasn't his. I'm not trying to sell content. I'm just trying to have a good basketball community that loves talking about hoops. So when you see these stat profiles, okay, I want you guys to engage with them. And when I ask this question right here, who else intrigued you? I want you guys to tell me about other players that you're not seeing in here, okay? Like other guys that, I didn't post in the 5 interesting box scores of the day for me. So this is something I've been doing every single day. If we go back, here's, January 19th, for example, Jimmy Butler, 8 points, by the way. I'm clearly not bought in there, but I really hope you guys did enjoy the stream tonight. Really appreciate you guys. I do think that this Suns trade affected the Rockets. We'll talk about that more in a future video. Stay tuned, okay? Stay tuned for any future uploads. We're going to have a lot to talk about. So I'm really excited for it. Appreciate all of you guys. Appreciate you, Ben. Appreciate you, King Nacho. Really appreciate everyone who's been watching. Thanks all so much, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.